Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Strangers and Exiles podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Toirac, and this is my co-host, Daniel Toirac Sr.
Hello, everyone.
So we've been going down the rabbit hole of Christian sects, cults, denominations, all that recently. Started with the Catholics, then went on to the Mormons, then the Adventists and Jehovah's Witnesses. Now we're going to start venturing into other world religions.
Okay, very good.
So we're starting off with Islam and the Muslims.
Ooh, the biggest one of all. This is the big fish.
I know you've been very interested in this recently, watching videos and stuff.
Man, for the last month, I've been completely addicted to watching apologetic videos on debates with Muslims. I'll give a shout out, even though nobody knows us. God Logic Apologetics and Sam Shamounian. They just, it's amazing the way that they take the word of God and they take the truth and they go ahead and show the lies that Islam is. So,
Today,
so lately I've been super into it. But besides the fact that I've been reading, I'm almost done with my fourth book that I've been reading on Islam, from the biblical, from the evangelical perspective, but also from their books, you know. So I've been just completely saturated with the Prophet Muhammad, praise be unto him, and and all, just everything. So really, just to give you guys a preface, we're not really going to get into doctrine. We're more just going to talk about them in general. And the reason why I don't want to get too deep into doctrine is just because it's too much, and it's too contradictory. It's just, they have taken. Okay, should I just start, or do you want to do opening comments? No, you go first because you read. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I read at least what we're talking about today. Besides the stuff that I already kind of knew from beforehand, it's very interesting to see how they took our Christian and then also Judaism and just completely twisted it and made something new, but say it's kind of the same thing.
Exactly.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, just so you know, just like last time when I gave you guys the pointers of how to know you're in a cult. Okay, if you're a Muslim, you're in a cult. Just so you know, very clearly, you're in a cult. What they do is the Quran affirms the Old Testament, the Torah, the Psalms, and what they call the Injil, the gospel. They affirm what we have. When Muhammad was born, the Bible was everywhere. The Torah was everywhere. That was very well known all throughout the area. However, what they've done is that they've created this fake book called the Quran. And reading this book, just so you know, this book that I'm reading, I'm actually going to mention this book because I actually think it's a book that will be helpful for every Christian to read. I believe every Christian should read this book. It is called The Infidel's Guide to the Quran. The writer is not putting down the Quran. The writer is revealing what the Quran says. And when you read that book, you realize the Quran is fake. It is just, this guy made it up. This is the greatest hoax on the world. I think more than the second gunman in the grassy knoll, John F. Kennedy. This is the greater hoax than even that. And that book really exposes what the Quran talks about. But it is just a completely false religion. So the reason why they're a cult is because they affirm the Old Testament, the Torah, and what they call the Injil, the gospel. But they say that doesn't exist, that it was lost. And they obviously do not affirm the New Testament. But they love to use the New Testament to talk about the Quran and to talk about Muhammad. So in other words, they will quote in these debates from the New Testament, but yet they will not affirm that the New Testament is real. And this is what they say. Very simple. They say everything in the Bible is corrupt because everything that is in the Bible does not align with what's in the Quran. So obviously you can't affirm the Old and New Testament because the Old and New Testament do not align with supposedly the last word of God, which is the Quran. So what do they say? It's corrupt. It's been corrupted. It's been corrupted. You can't trust it. So you know you're in a cult when, number one, they affirm the biblical sources, but yet they tell you don't read it because it's corrupt. And number two, you know you're in a cult when if you say anything negative about anybody, the leaders, if you say anything negative about Muhammad, if you say anything negative about Allah, if you mention anything about Christianity, if you mention anything about the Trinity, you are forever damned. And if you leave the Muslims, then you're forever damned and you go to hell. And you're shunned by your family. So once again, the same rules that apply to the Jehovah's Witnesses apply to Islam. Yeah. So that's how you know you're in a cult. So anyway.
I think I've heard it said by apologists that they say Jehovah's Witness is the true Christianity, right? Something similar to that.
Yeah, of course. They have to attack because they cannot get their heads around the Trinity. Mm-hmm. The Trinity, the concept of three persons being in one the one essence, one substance, they can't grasp it. But guess what? They're not supposed to. Yeah. They're not supposed to, because guess what? The Lord has blinded the eyes of people, and people just won't get it. And it is what it is. And we would love for them to come to Christ. And many have. Many Muslims have come to Christ through these apologists and these debaters because they see the truth. And we're going to get into why they've come to Christianity, which is something that you were talking about earlier, which we'll talk about that.
So let's start off. Let's get into it. Let's start off with the origin story of Islam. Do you think you can explain to us how Islam has come to be as a world religion?
All right. It was a very warm day in Mecca, Saudi Arabia, and a child was born unto the desert in the year 570 after death. So in other words, 570 Common Era. So, literally 540 years after Jesus Christ died on the cross, right? He was born, and he was born and raised in Mecca. Mecca is in Saudi Arabia. And by the time he was 40 years old, he supposedly was a man that was very devout. If you read the Quran, he obviously had the Bible, because a lot of the stuff that's in the Quran is in the Bible. So, you can't talk about Moses and Abraham and Jesus. They call Jesus Isa. He knew a lot about the whole Old Testament and New Testament. He also had a lot of extra biblical writings. Reading this book, The Infidel's Guide to the Quran, in the Quran, he cited a lot of those pseudepigrapha, those extra biblical books that are not in the Bible, but he ripped that off from somewhere else. He mentions Mary being a virgin. He meant a lot of that stuff is in the Quran. The problem is that it's twisted. Mm. And that's what the devil likes to do, is twist. So when he's 40 years old in the year 610, the angel Gabriel comes down to visit him and gives him supposedly a book. And then Gabriel, which they call him Jibril, I like saying it that way, the Arabic. Muhammad says, "Oh, I can't read that." So then now we know that Muhammad can't read and write. So this prophet that God, I'm sorry, I'm not going to say God, Allah, because I have to differentiate here. The prophet that Allah used could not read and write. Gabriel came and visited him multiple times, and the dude could not read it. So finally, Gabriel began to recite the Quran to him. And this man who could not read or write, he memorized it. This was over a period of 20 years, by the way. Just so you know, this is over a period of 20 years where the angel Gabriel would come and give him this Quran, and he would memorize it. And what he would do is that he would spend his day repeating it, and he would have other people memorize it as well. And he also had a scribe. The guy's name was Zaid. So he goes, and over a period of 20 years, he's basically reciting this. Now, he goes and, he marries a widow, a wealthy widow. Her name was Khadija. This thing is moving too much. How do you tighten this? I don't know. I don't like it moving. All right. He married this woman. They had 6 children. 2 of them were boys. 4 of them were girls. Both boys died early. The girls survived. He started receiving all of this from from Gabriel. One of the things that Gabriel told Muhammad, and this is, once again, this is how you know it's fake, because it contradicts. Gabriel told Muhammad that man was made out of a blood clot. Did y'all catch that? This is very early DNA. This is like cloning. This is Jurassic Park Part 1. So number one, you know it's false when it doesn't jive with the biblical account. There's nothing in the biblical account that says that God made Adam from a blood clot. But apparently, that's what he told him. Now, Muhammad was going nuts because he thought he was demon-possessed. He's like, no, this can't be real. But it finally got to a point where he understood what was going on. And then, so he gets all of this for 20 years, and then he finally dictates it. Of course, if you ask any Muslim, they will say that the Quran is perfectly preserved. It's the exact words of Allah. The exact words of Allah. Now, I'm going to ask you, Junior. I'm just you. You're a bright young man. Now, we have Moses writing the Torah. And then all throughout the book of Joshua, Judges, and 1 Samuel, we have the incorporation of copies and scribes and people making copies of these things. Then you have, obviously, the period of the prophets and the Babylonian captivity. And then we know that we have the true Old Testament because of, obviously, we have a lot of old codexes. And we went through that in the Where Did My Bible Come From class. But then we also have the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Dead Sea Scrolls, they have the entire book of Isaiah. It's over there in Jerusalem in one of their museums. And then it matches word for word. So we have historical, like actual papers. That's the Old Testament. The New Testament, that's where it gets really bad for the Muslims, because we have so many extant copies of the New Testament in various language. It's not only in Aramaic, we also have it in Greek, we also have it in Hebrew, we have it in Syriac, and then obviously subsequently we have another language. And we have codexes that date back to the early time of Jesus. Now, why am I saying this? We have a clear handing off. And then obviously the Masoretes, they ended up getting all of the codexes, and then they ended up creating the Masoretic text, which added the vowels to the Old Testament Hebrew. And then obviously once we get to the Reformation, we have people like Erasmus, and we have John Wycliffe, and we have all of those guys that ended up translating to the different languages. We got the Reina Valera, which is, they did it into Spanish. In other words, we have clear that the text has been preserved over time. But then they say it's corrupted. And then we say, give me proof of that. And they say, well, because it's corrupt. They don't have an answer. Meanwhile, now, if I tell you logically, Junior, just objectively, forget that you're Junior Christian, you're just a random person listening to what I'm telling you. And obviously believing me through good faith. I will tell you, look, Christianity, Judaism, Christianity, we have a clear handing down of scriptures, and look at all of the copies that we have, that they all match to one another. Yeah, maybe there was a period there that isn't on this copy or whatever, a comma, or maybe it was an A instead of an E, but but nothing that changes the actual text. We have all of this. And then I tell you, okay, this side over here, they really only have copies that date back. They only have a few couple scraps that date back to 20 years after Muhammad died. But then they do have more that date to like 100, 150 years after Muhammad died. But we have nothing from the actual time of Muhammad. We only have stuff that comes from after Muhammad. Would you put more trust in this side or in the other side? You would put more trust in the Judaism. Yeah. But 2 billion Muslims today, they claim that their word of God, which, mind you, pay attention, it was dictated. It wasn't that Gabriel, told Muhammad and Muhammad wrote it down because he couldn't read and write. Muhammad had to memorize it and then repeat it. And they say it's perfectly preserved. It's perfectly preserved. Meanwhile, we don't have a full codex of them for like 150 years after Muhammad, like a full actual copy. Now you might ask me, well, how big is the Quran?
How big is the Quran?
The Quran is basically the size of our entire New Testament. So if I were to tell you, Junior, memorize the entire New Testament word for word, memorize it, and then the next day repeat it word for word, and it will be exact. Would you say that is 100% possible?
No.
I
Very
would
difficult.
I just think logically, but then this is what they say. Oh, back then in the Arabian culture, it was very common for people to memorize. And then you know what they do? They even make their children memorize the whole Quran just to prove the point.
Yeah.
They literally make them memorize the entire Quran. I'm sorry, I went off on a little tangent there. So anyway, so we have Muhammad. He's receiving this revelation from Jibril in Mecca. He's telling the people. By this time, he has about 100 followers. You know, he has a group of people, but really, he's being protected by his uncle. His uncle's kind of guaranteeing his protection. You know, his uncle's like the muscle. He's telling people in Arabia. Now, remember, we have to have a base understanding. Okay, you might say, well, what did they believe in Saudi Arabia at that time in Mecca? There were Christians. There were Jews. Then there was Muhammad with his new thing. And then there were the Arabian polytheism. They actually believed in 360 gods. They had a whole bunch of gods. So then that was the predominant view of the people. So then when Muhammad comes out on set and he starts spewing what he's spewing, the Christians obviously are like, dude's nuts. The Jews are obviously like, dude, this is nuts, which is why most of the Quran is directed towards hatred towards the Jews and the Christians. But we'll get to that later. So he ends up leaving because they're mocking him, and he ends up going away. His uncle died, and then so he ended up leaving, and he ended up going north to another city that is called Medina. That is an actual city right now in Saudi Arabia. So then he goes up there and he flees Mecca in the year 622. And that actually becomes the beginning of their calendar. They actually, just like the Jews, they have their own calendar. Even though they say it's 2025. I mean, we went to Dubai. They put 2025 on the Burj Khalifa. Yeah. So obviously they're not saying, no, this is year 1300 or whatever. So they actually, that event, the emigration to Medina is called the Hijra. So at this point in his life, now mind you, if God, Allah, is giving Muhammad the words through Gabriel, they would be God's words, right? Mm-hmm. See, now this is where we have a distinction on the tenor and the tone of the Quran, which we're going to talk about more when we get into the Quran. I want to mention this because we'll talk about this again and I'll repeat myself. The Quran, the Muslims love to say, oh, we are all about peace. We're all about tolerance. We don't believe in killing or all of that. That's what they love to sell people. The problem is that their book says a very different story. And once again, if every Christian would read that book, The Infidel's Guide to the Quran, you will see exactly on print what I'm talking about. When Muhammad was in Mecca, he had a very peaceful message. In other words, all of the verses that the Muslims love to cite were written in Mecca. When he gets kicked out of Mecca and he starts being persecuted and he starts being hated, his message changed. That's when his message got violent. That's when the jihad came out, you know? So you'll see half of the Quran is very nice and peaceful. And then the other half of the Quran is all about killing all Jews and Christians and persecuting them and killing them. And if they don't submit to you, then kill them, behead them, all of that good stuff. From Medina, Muhammad sent his followers on murderous, pillaging campaigns against Meccan caravans, and he took at least 1/5 of all the loot. So in other words, any caravan that was going north from Mecca, he would have them rape, pillage, destroy, kill, murder. Once again, the Muslims say that he was perfect and sinless. He was God's guy. But man, when you read the Quran and see what this homeboy did, you get a very different picture of what this prophet was. And of course, I love to compare Muhammad to Christ. When you compare the behavior of the true Son of God, the behavior of the one that was anointed, of the one that was sent by the true God, Yahweh, when you compare him to this animal that Allah sent, this Muhammad, who they say, peace be upon him, that he is the greatest prophet of all. But you see his behaviors, you get a very clear picture of what truth is here. And that is why I'm going to get fired up in this one, just so you know. I'm going to get fired up. Sam Shamoon gets me fired up. I'm going to get fired up. So let's just keep going. Sometimes captives would be brought before Muhammad to determine their destiny and would plead for their lives to no avail. One man begged Muhammad not to kill him because it would leave his daughter an orphan. Muhammad heartlessly replied that hell would take care of her. In Medina, that was after he left Mecca. In Medina, after the Jews refused to accept Muhammad as a prophet, he banished them and confiscated their land and property. He later massacred and enslaved two of the tribes, the Banu Nadir and the Banu Qurayza, as we will see, which we'll talk about that later on in this book. So in other words, the guy that was preaching tolerance, the Jews, all of that, he changed his tone. Now he became a murderer. He became like a fighter, a jihadist, Eventually, Muhammad marched on Mecca with an army of 10,000, and the city submitted to him. When given a choice of converting to Islam or accepting a servant status, most people converted, obviously, Muhammad began the Muslim custom of forcing Muslims to convert, die, or pay a heavy tax called the jizya. And then if you paid the jizya, basically what it was, you either convert or you die or you choose to pay a tax. And that is something that they've gotten rid of that in all Muslim countries. Now every Muslim country has modern tax systems like what we have. But basically what it was, if it was a Muslim-run city or country or whatever, and then let's say you're a Jew or you're a Christian or you're a Buddhist or a Hindu, it doesn't matter, and you want to live there, you like living there, you like the desert, and you say, okay, look, I don't want to convert to Islam, I don't want to die, I'll pay you the tax. And these taxes were very heavy. They were very heavy taxes, but at least you were allowed to live there. Once you agree to pay that tax, you are now called a dhimmi. That's the word that they use for it, not dummy, dhimmi. So, and this is basically a protection status that you're paying for protection. In other words, it's almost like Muhammad is the mob, the mafia, and then you're paying for their protection. So that's basically what it is. At Khaybar, Muhammad instituted the first dhimmis. After the best of the goods were taken from the Jews, Muhammad let them work the land. Since his men knew nothing about farming and the Jews were skilled at it, they worked the land and gave Muhammad half of their profits. So the tax was 50%. Yeah, it's heavy tax, heavy tax. All who did not convert were banned from Mecca, and it is still illegal for non-Muslims to enter the city today. And I actually found that interesting. I looked it up because I didn't know. I mean, I hear people say, "Oh, Mecca." But yeah, I looked it up, and they have literal entry points with security guards, and if you're not a Muslim, you can't go into Mecca. So just so you guys know, Mecca is the #1 most holy place for them, and we'll get into why in a little while. The second most holy place is Medina, and the reason why Medina is because they have a mosque, a really big mosque, and in one of the roofs of the mosque is a green roof, and that is where Muhammad's body is laid to rest. And then the third most holy site is the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, where the temple, the Jewish temple used to be, and then they put a mosque there, and it's the roof is gold. And when I tell you the story behind that, you're gonna laugh. Muhammad waged jihad on many cities and tribes, looting them, taking slaves, and forcing them to submit to Islam. Consider the Jews of Khaybar. He attacked these peaceful settlements, killed many of the men, robbed them of their hard-earned wealth, enslaved their women and children, and forced the surviving men to farm the land and give half of the income to the Muslims. And I'm going to read you this. It's a little bit long, but I think it's very helpful. This is from an official Muhammad biography. So this is an official Muhammad biography. After the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, Muhammad stayed in Medina for about 2 months before he collected his army and marched to the forts of Khaybar. It was a wealthy community of Jewish farmers who lived in a village of separate forts about 100 miles from Medina. So this Khaybar, Jewish city, wealthy. Muhammad seized the forts one at a time. Among the captives, get this is how sick this guy is. Among the captives was a beautiful Jewess named Safiya. She was a young, beautiful Jewish girl. Muhammad took her for his sexual pleasure. This is a prophet of God.
Yeah.
Of God, the Most High, Allah, the Supreme One, right? And then this guy is taking a girl to be a sexual slave. This guy was human trafficking before it became a thing the Russians did. So like now it's like he's the original OG human trafficker. And he started with Safiya. Her husband, get this, Safiya, she was married. Her husband and father were killed by the Muslims. So this poor girl was solo. Mm-hmm. One of his men, one of Muhammad's men, had first chosen her for his own pleasure as a slave. But Muhammad, get this, he traded 2 of her cousins, Safiya's cousins, for Safiya. That's how much he liked her, 2 for 1. Like, I'll give you 2 of these cousins. They're probably a little bit uglier, but you get 2 of them for the one Safiya. Muhammad always got first choice of the spoils of war and the women. Muhammad, now remember, this is from the biography. Muhammad knew that there was a large treasure hidden somewhere in Khaybar. He knew that there was a treasure. So he goes and finds this Jew, and he tells the Jew, hey, where's the treasure? The Jew says, I don't know. He says, come on, where's the treasure? I don't know. So then they start torturing him. They literally build a fire on his chest, and they started burning, like to burn him. And then they're like, where's the treasure at? Dude says, I don't know. So they finally believed him, and they said, all right, he doesn't know. So still not, Muhammad had him released and taken to one of his men who had a brother killed in the fight. This Muslim, pay attention, this poor guy that didn't know where the treasure was at, Muhammad let him go. That Muslim that one of his brothers was killed in this fight, he had the pleasure. This is what's coming from their book, their biography. He had the pleasure of cutting off the tortured Jew's head. Does that sound like a godly man?
Of course not.
Does that sound like something that is from God? At least on this side of the cross? See, now, of course, the Muslims say, well, what about the Old Testament? Well, the Old Testament is a little bit different. They needed to get rid of so that they could claim the land. Yeah, there were some barbaric acts, but there were some very barbaric. The Philistines, they were very barbaric. So yeah, you had to fight fire with fire. But on this side of the cross, Muhammad's 500, 600 years after Christ. At this side of the cross, all of this nastiness should not be going on. Especially not from the man of God. That's the key here. Really, the takeaway that I want people to get from this is not just Islam religion. Islam was instituted by a man whom Allah chose to be their ultimate final prophet. So we have to measure Islam through who is giving us Islam. Who gave us Christianity?
Jesus.
Who gave us Islam?
Muhammad.
We have to compare the two. We have to compare Muhammad with Christ. And we have to compare the behaviors. And then we have to see if it passes the smell test. And then everything I've read in the last week and a half does not pass the smell test, which is why Islam is false. Let's keep going. Check this out. Muhammad had 11 to 15 wives and many sex slaves. It's all about the dude just wanted sex all day, just all day long. His wives included his own daughter-in-law. You caught that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he really liked this chick. So then he had his son divorce her so he can marry her. Yeah, that's a godly dude, right? His wives included his own daughter-in-law. And get this. This is where we get very, very sticky, and not in a good way. And the 9-year-old daughter of one of his original converts, the one and only. This is the linchpin, the thorn in the foot of every Muslim out there. How do you justify Aisha? Aisha, at the age of 6, was married to Muhammad. Muhammad was in his 50s or around 50. At the age of 6, he had sex with her when she was 9 years old. How do you justify that? This is the man of God. When Jesus said, all the little children come to me, Muhammad said the same thing, but for a different reason. Jesus wanted to bless the children. Muhammad wanted to have sex with them. This is how filthy and gross this man is. And this entire religion really revolves around that. Because guess what? To the day of today, you know what the legal age of marriage in Iran is?
It's 12, I believe.
9 years old.
9.
I looked it up. In Iran, right now, you're allowed to have 4 wives. Every Muslim in Iran is allowed to have 4 wives. You can marry a 9-year-old right now today in Iran, just so you know. But yeah, this is like the religion, right? This is the religion. Okay. At the age of 9, he consummated with Aisha, according to her own writings. So in other words, these were her writings later on. Look at how, paint this picture, how sad this is. She was allowed to bring her dolls into the harem due to her age. This is a little girl with dolls, bro. And this 50-year-old man is doing what he's doing to her. In 620, so now this is when Muhammad is 50 years old, right? 50 years old. The angel Gabriel allegedly woke up Muhammad and brought him to a winged horse or a mule called, this is the story I told you about that you're going to love. A winged horse or mule called Al-Burak, not Barack Obama, Al-Burak, having a woman's face. It was they say it was bigger than a mule, smaller than a donkey. So, but really and the thing is that every commentator has given their own spin on this because it's such a dumb story.
Thing, yeah.
But the mule, the animal, was called Al-Burak. And just so you know, in Arabic, Al is the.
Oh, okay.
So the Burak. So just so you know, not Burak, not Burak, Burak. So the Burak. And this animal had a woman's face. It had eagle's wings. Interesting looking thing. It's almost like something from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And a peacock's tail. That's an interesting freaking animal.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Which he mounted and rode to the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. Now, but wait, before I get into this, I just want to say what this is called the Isra and the Miraj. Isra and Miraj. I'm going to tell you the whole story. It's freaking hilarious. Let me get this other thing over here because I really want to show this to you guys. Is it there? Okay, it's this one. Yeah. Okay. Basically, this is what happened. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but can you see this? I mean, it's kind of small, right? Yeah. Okay. Basically, this is what they call the night journey. You know, some people say, oh, it was a vision. Some people say he took ayahuasca and he just had this trip, you know, whatever, you know. But but just so you know, it's going to make sense in a second. This is the dumbest thing ever. So this mule or this donkey with a woman's face, by the way, probably Aisha or maybe Safiya, maybe, you know, the Jewess, and then with eagle wings. So already picture a donkey with eagle wings, a woman's face, and a peacock tail. Right off the bat, it's okay. But once again, this is him telling his followers this story. He starts out in Mecca, right? He's in Mecca. Then Oh yeah, he's accompanied by Angel Gabriel. Just so Gabriel's taking him on this interesting looking animal. Then he goes to Medina, which is where subsequently 12 years later his body would be buried. Then he goes to pray at Mount Sinai, which is way over there in the Sinai Peninsula. This is a fun ride, huh?
Yeah.
On this interesting looking mule or whatever. Then he ends up praying at Bethlehem, where Isa, Jesus, was born, which we went to that church.
Yeah.
Then, if this is almost like one of those, what is that movie that you like? The one that they're in Vegas and like they wake up the next day and they're like
Hangover.
Yeah. Hangover. They're just discovering everything that they did. Then he goes to the grave of Musa. Musa is Moses. Now, mind you, we know that Moses he died on the plains of Moab. He was not able to go into the promised land. However, nobody can tell you exactly where his grave is at. Nobody. We just don't know.
Yeah.
But apparently, Muhammad, riding the woman-faced mule with eagle wings and peacock tail, he figured it out. So he knows where Musa's at. Okay, then this is important. This is where they end up. They end up at the Al-Masjid. Just so you know, Masjid is mosque, the Aqsa. That's why we call it the Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is the Dome of the Rock. However, that didn't exist when this journey took place. All right? So you get that, right?
Yeah.
However, they publish that he ended up at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, but it didn't exist for another 100 years. Okay, all right, fine. Let's give them that, Junior. Let's give them that. So now what happens when he lands there? Now this is why the Dome of the Rock, that mosque, is the third most holy site for them. It's because of this. And it's going to be even funnier. So the next time you see the pictures of the Dome of the Rock, you'll be like, these people are stupid. This guy rode this fake horse thing with a girl's face and a peacock's tail. But okay. So guess what he did? He arrives at Jerusalem with Gabriel, and he gets off of this horse thing, mule, this phantom, whatever it is. He gets off of it, and guess where he ties it to?
What?
He ties it to the Western Wall. The Western Wall where the Jews go and they pray every day. He ties that fake donkey to the Western Wall. Then guess what happens? He is transported. He is transported with Gabriel to the seven heavens. All right? Now, let me tell you what happens in these things. Okay, let me go back. He's transported to the seven heavens. See, this doesn't tell you really. Okay, yeah. In the first heaven, I think he sees, if I'm not mistaken, Adam. And then in the second one, he sees John the Baptist and Jesus. And every time he goes up there, they're all like, oh, yeah, you're doing a good job, Muhammad. And they pray. Like, he does prayers every time, But they're all like, yeah, you're doing Allah's work. Because remember, the Muslims, they think the Adam and Eve is Muslim, is Allah. They feel that our Bibles are corrupt, that we changed Ishmael for Isaac. Like, we got rid of the Ishmael thing, and then we instituted the Isaac line. So they're like, oh, that's why you can't trust it. It's corrupt. It's corrupt. It's corrupt. Corrupt something that's been around for thousands of years, or something that some guy on acid just came up with in the middle of the desert, and on top of that, he can't even read and write. Okay, all right. I'll go with you. I'll go with it. Ultimately, he ends up going up. He sees Enoch, he sees Aaron, he sees Moses, and then he sees Abraham, and then in the seventh heaven he sees Allah, and Allah basically tells him, "Dude, you're doing a good job. You're doing a good job." So then he comes back down, and then he's magically transported all the way back to Mecca. All right.
It just doesn't make any sense.
That's why some commentators say that it might have been a dream, because it kind of doesn't make any sense that this actually happened.
Yeah.
But that is why, I just want everybody to know, that is why the Dome of the Rock, that land, that mosque, it's more for the land, not really the mosque. The mosque came later. That is why it's considered the third most holy site. Just so you know, the first most holy site is the Kaaba in Mecca. I don't know if you guys know what the Kaaba is. I will show you what the Kaaba is. This is the Kaaba. This is the Kaaba in Saudi Arabia. It's a big black thing. And I'm going to get into this after. I don't want to tell you because then I get sidetracked. So that's number one. The second one is, like I said, the mosque in Medina, that it has the bones of Muhammad. And the third most holy site is the Dome of the Rock because of that story that I just told you. That totally believable story, right? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I could get down with a mule that has a chick's face, that has eagle wings, that has a peacock tail, that took me to 6 different spots. And then Jibril, I parked her at the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall. And then Jibril took me to all the 7 heavens. And ultimately, I saw Allah, and Allah was just, so happy with me. So in the seventh heaven, Muhammad claims to have seen a beautiful woman with red lips that was very attractive to him. When he asked who she was, Abraham told him that she belonged to Muhammad's adopted son, Zaid. Muhammad died of a fever in 632 at age 63 or 62. Doesn't make any sense.
It always goes back to women too.
Yeah. Well, because this is what he used to justify telling his son to divorce the girl. So then he goes and tells his son, "Hey, look, man, I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't want to marry her. That's your wife, but Abraham told me I'm supposed to marry you, and Allah signed off. Allah signed off on it. So, dude, can you divorce her so I can go and get her? It's always about women. Well, even their heaven is women. Even their heaven is 72 virgins. Mm-hmm. Where do they find all these virgins? They're definitely not in any Muslim country because they can have 4 of them. Where are these? Is there a virgin factory in this paradise? Are they like Barbies or something? It doesn't make any sense. It's dumb. It's stupid. The whole religion is false. But yeah, that was supposed to be 10 minutes, and I probably took 45 minutes, right?
Yeah, we're at 42.
Very good. Just to give you the intro. That was the intro.
Okay, so the Quran, can you explain to us what the Quran is, what it kind of contains, and maybe some of the other authoritative writings that they have? Because I know it's not only the Quran.
All right. Their most holy book is the Quran. All right. The Quran it is not like our Bible. Okay. We have to first start out there. Our Bible is a book with historical narrative. It is based in history. It goes from creation, and it tells you a story. It's a story. You got Noah, and then you have Abraham, the flood, then Abraham, and then you have the rest of the book of Genesis is Isaac and Jacob and Joseph. And then you have, Moses, his storyline comes into play in Egypt. And then it's almost a history book of mankind revolving around God's chosen people. And it's very clear. It runs, you have the first 17 books of the Old Testament are the historical narrative books. And then you have what we'd call the poetic books, the Psalms, Job, Proverbs, those books. And then the last 17 books of the Bible, so just so you know, 17 historical narrative, 5 poetic, 17 prophetic books. Those are the books where it starts with Isaiah and it goes all the way down to Malachi. That's the way the Old Testament is structured. Then there's a period of 400 years of silence. And then we have the introduction of Christ, Jesus, the Messiah. And then really the New Testament covers you from the year, 4 BC, all the way to around the year 95, the year 95 Common Era, with John writing the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation. But then the first 5 books of the New Testament, which Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and the book of Acts, are the first 60 years after Jesus died. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, the first 60 years of when Jesus is born up until, so in other words, like the year 60, really it covers that. Because the book of Acts does not end with the death of Peter or Paul. That happened a little bit after. So in other words, the Bible is kind of put together, and it has 40 different authors, around 40 different authors, but it's cohesive. It jives together. It works together. Now, that's the Bible. So that's an understanding of the Bible. What is the Quran? The Quran is one book, and it has 114 chapters. The chapters are not called chapters. They're called surahs. Every surah contains verses. They don't call them verses. They call them ayats. So you got surah is the chapters, ayat are the verses. How did they put this book together? And once again, this even shows you how dumb this religion is. The actual chapters, what they did is chapter 1 or surah 1 is kind of like it's a short surah that has a prayer in it. It's kind of like, so they threw it there as kind of like an intro. But you know what they did after? They literally put them from longest to shortest. Now, it isn't, not every chapter is like, because maybe there might be the next one has a couple verses extra. But the general idea was they went from long to short. The problem is that you have no cohesion. You have no continuity. Chapter 2 was probably written like 10 years after chapter 3 or chapter 1. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There is no unity. There's no cohesion. It is probably one of the hardest books to understand because it's almost like ramblings. Within one chapter, one surah, you can have Muhammad talking about 12 different things. It's almost just like rambles of some guy that can't read or write. And then there's other books. Now, just so you know, the Quran is one of the most vague books ever written. It doesn't give you details about anything. It just kind of randomly says something, and then you have no idea. So then how do you interpret that? What is your methods of interpretation? Well, they have something called the hadith and the sirah. And then once those two come together, they come together in something called the sunnah. The sunnah is the hadith and the sirah together. Now, what is the hadith? The hadith is basic. It's Muhammad talking. Like, people actually wrote down just him talking. Like, just casual conversation.
Yeah.
Now, in the book that I'm reading, the Infidel's Guide to the Quran, they bring out some of the funnier stuff. Some of the stuff that's just like, what? Like, that makes no sense. They're not doing it to make fun of Muhammad. They're doing it just to show how stupid it is. So in order for you to really understand the Quran, you need the Sunnah. The Sunnah is what gives you kind of almost a commentary on it. Mm-hmm. And then they have other things called the tafsir. The tafsir is basically commentaries. These are Muslim theologians that have written down, they've done commentaries, so that's what they have as a tafsir. The earliest extant written sources for these date to nearly a century and a half after Muhammad's death. So in other words, what happened was, well, let me first tell you about that, and I'll tell you about the Quran. What happened was that there was just copies everywhere of the Sunnah, and everybody had different copies. So then basically what happened was there was a guy named Al-Bukhari, where he went around and he went through all known Arabia, like literally all Persia. He went everywhere, and he collected everybody's hadiths and everybody's sirah, everybody's sunnah. And then what he did is that he came back and he compiled this massive work. So then what happens is that you'll have a sunnah from Iran, and then a sunnah from Saudi Arabia, and then a sunnah from Iraq, and they will all be talking about the same thing, but yet they'll be a little bit different. So where's the clarity here? Like, where's it at? All right. No, but they say the Quran. Their big focus is the Quran.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the other stuff, they look at it as extra biblical, but their main focus is the Quran. Now, so let's talk about the Quran. Muhammad dies the year 632. The next guy that takes over is this guy named Abu Bakr. And just so you know, Abu is father. Bakr. He takes over. Now, there were a group of people that wanted his son-in-law to take over. His son-in-law, his name was Ali. There was a split. Abu Bakr takes over. There's immediately fighting. Abu Bakr takes over, and then Abu Bakr dies. And then the next successor takes over. That guy dies. And then now the next guy comes in, the third guy. His name is Uthman. 20 years after Muhammad is dead, Uthman comes in. And they start telling him, hey, we got a problem. This was Muhammad's scribe, Zayd ibn Thabit. Just so you know, when it says Ibn is son of.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Ibn is son of. And he goes up to Uthman and he's like, hey, Uthman, we got a problem here. And then Uthman's like, what's going on? Like, I'm in the middle of these factions, these wars, people going on. There's a lot of nuttiness going on. People getting killed. And he says, look, we got a lot of different versions of the Quran. What do you mean? We have tons of different versions. The problem is that people that have memorized it were getting killed in these wars. So Muhammad had gotten people to memorize the whole Quran, but then they're being killed off in these battles. So then the only one left was Zayd that Uthman trusted in. So then Uthman says, okay, look, gather all of the Qurans that everybody has.
Yeah.
So then they gather all of them. They find that some of them have 116 chapters. Some of them have 111. Some of them have 114. Some of them have word variations. So then ultimately, you know what Uthman does? Uthman says, look, Zayd, you write down a Quran. Write down yours. Make copies of it. Give me all the other ones. We're going to burn them. So he literally burned every Quran that was out there, which is funny because it's illegal for you to burn a Quran. But their third leader burned, did a massive bonfire for Qurans. All right. So he burned all the Qurans and he used Zayd's. Now, of course, the factions didn't like that because they thought their Quran was the correct one. So then due to that and due to the early leadership, which, by the way, once Uthman was killed, the guy that the other people wanted came in, which his name is Ali. This created a split, which still exists today. This split, it started from the beginning. That's why later on in another episode, we're going to talk about Islam's greatest enemy is Islam. Muslims' greatest enemies are Muslims because all of their history is them killing each other. They can't even get on the same page with that. So basically, the Qurans were unified around 20, 25 years after Muhammad died. And then that is what became the gold standard. But it caused a split to where now you have the Sunnis and then you have the Shias. The Sunnis and the Shiites, we're going to talk about that later on in another episode. Another thing that the Quran, Muslims believe that the Quran is the final revelation of God superseding the Bible. Which we're also going to talk in a future episode about their doctrine of abrogation. Very important. We're going to talk about that. But in other words, they believe that this now is the latest. So in other words, the latest is the greatest. So then it supersedes the Bible. The Quran consists of 114 surahs or chapters arranged by length from longest to shortest. It is not arranged by history or even by topic. It is they put it together and they're like, all right, bind that bad boy, go to the printers and then send it out. The only official language of the Quran is Arabic, which must be used in prayers, readings, and memorization, just so you know. The only version of the Quran that they consider authoritative is the Arabic. They don't, if you try to argue with them with an English one, they're going to say, oh, you don't know how to read Arabic. Oh, you don't know how to read Arabic. So then, and then, if you decide to become a Muslim, you don't have to learn Arabic, but your prayers have to be in Arabic. So you have to learn the prayers. And it was funny. I was reading something in that book. I think it was the Infidel's Guide to the Quran. And then he gave a little side story about a guy that's been a Muslim for 10 years. And he does the prayers 5 times a day and all of that. And then they asked him, hey, so what exactly are you saying? He says, I have no idea. The guy doesn't actually know what he's saying. He just does it because you have to do it, you know? Can you imagine? Oh, man. And then lastly, on this question, the Quran can be divided, and this is very important. The Quran can be divided into 3 divisions according to 3 periods of Muhammad's life. The early Meccan surahs, remember when he was in Mecca early, and then Jibril was giving him the thing. It was composed in Mecca before Muhammad's flight to Medina. Then you have the Medina surahs, which are once he had to leave Mecca, he went to Medina. And those are composed during the time that the Muslims controlled Medina. And then the late Meccan surahs, which is the last couple years of his life, those were when Muhammad came back, took over Mecca, and was in control of Mecca. Just so you know, the Medina and the late Meccan surahs are the aggressive ones. That's when he became a warrior for Allah instead of being a messenger of Allah. He should have come to give the message of Allah. Instead, he ended up becoming the warrior of Allah, which once again, read that book, The Infidel's Guide to the Quran. It really makes all of this clear. So that's what's going on.
The one about the only being able to understand the Quran in Arabic, it just feels kind of like, why would God create something that not everyone can understand in some way?
That's how you know it's false.
Yeah.
That's once again, like look, they even in that they contradict themselves. So in other words, Allah, the all-knowing, the all-wise, would only give his word to be spoken in a language of which only 10% of the world knows. Come on, amigo. Who are you trying to sell this religion to? This religion is stupid. It literally contradicts itself at every turn. So yeah, let's go.
As you just said, the Quran contradicts itself, but it also has many contradictions to the Bible. So maybe you can kind of explain some of those contradictions to us.
Okay, this is where we get where it's just nutty. Now is when you know Muhammad knew the Bible, but was being completely led by Satan. Allah is Satan. There's Allah is not God. Don't tell me Allah is God. Allah is Satan. Satan is literally going to this dumb guy that can't read or write, and then he's spitting out lies, and then he's memorizing them, and then he's getting other people to write it down. All right. The Quran contains many contradictions to and strange additions to the Bible, and there's a lot of them. So let's get through them. Surah 21:30, heaven and earth were a single mass before Allah cut them apart.
So at creation, earth and heaven were the same, and then they just split them.
So in other words, earth, a planet, this planet, and heaven, which for them, they got 7 of them. So I guess he did 7 slices on that. It was all one mass. And then he split it in half, and then thus came earth, the world that we live in, and then the 7 heavens. He had sliced that up 7 times just to get the 7 in. So yeah, once again, weird. Another thing that in Surah 21:30, God, get this one. Are you going to love this one? God made every living creature from water. What?
So Adam didn't come from dust.
I'm telling you, if you read that Infidel's Guide to the Quran, there's so many. I even show them to my wife, and she just starts laughing because they make no sense. It's like what we would equate somebody on acid today.
Yeah.
Sorry, the producer. Yeah, she just had to give us her title. And she's like, no, my wife, no, I'm the producer. During this hour and a half, I call me producer. Then you call me wife. All right. Surah 23:7, they say there are 7 heavens. We know at least from our Bible that there are 3 that Paul mentioned. Surah 21:15, God told the angels to fall down and worship Adam. So in other words, God tells the angels to worship a man. Okay, very good. And all of them did except for one, Iblis. Who's Iblis, Junior?
Satan.
That's right. Satan decided, you know what? I don't want to bow down to this man, this created being. And that was when he rebelled against Allah. Surah 5:30-35, Cain regretted killing his brother. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that. He never regretted it. Surah 11:42-43, Noah had a fourth son who died in the flood. Apparently, this son told Noah he didn't want to go in the ark, because I actually read it. I was like, okay, I want to read what this is. He didn't want to go on the ark. He told his father, I'll just go to a high mountain. And his father said, no, like you're going to die. And then he says, no, I'll be all right. And then apparently Noah goes to Allah and says, you know, what do I do now? And he says, look, he made his choice. It is what it is. So, and that's it. So yeah, apparently he had a fourth son that died. Okay, very good. Noah prayed that God would kill all unbelievers. And Noah said, Lord, do not leave one family of kafirs alive on earth. A kafir, just so you know, is a non-believer. Mm-hmm. It's what the Jews will call Gentiles, right? They call them kafirs. Because if you do, then they will trick your servants and will only breed more sinners and kafirs. Nowhere in the Bible did Noah say anything. Nowhere did he say to kill all the unbelievers. Surah 3:66, they say Abraham was not a Jew.
I guess to lead into the point that he gave way to Ishmael instead of Isaac.
Yeah, he was an Arab.
Yeah.
Obviously. Surah 21:56, Abraham smashed his father's idols. We don't have anywhere where it says that. He just left his father in Haran. Abraham offered Ishmael rather than Isaac. That's their big one. Mm. That's where they say that we corrupted our Bible, that it was actually Ishmael, not Isaac. Why would you guys see that the Jews are always trying to steal everything? They even stole the spotlight, the sacrifice. No, it was Isaac. Though the Quran itself doesn't say which son Abraham offered, the Hadith and Sirah say it was Ishmael. So in other words, in the ramblings of Muhammad, he said that it was Ishmael. Oh, get this. Ishmael was a steadfast and patient man, one of the chosen, an apostle and prophet. Where the Bible obviously tells us that Ishmael was a nut. God commanded Abraham and Ishmael. Oh, you're going to love this one. God commanded Abraham and Ishmael to build the Kaaba at Mecca for pilgrimage. And we commanded Abraham and Ishmael, purify my house, the Kaaba, for those who go around it, those who meditate there, and those who bow down and worship there. Do you want me to get into that now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Real quick. Once again, this is the Kaaba. That is in the city of Mecca. What Muhammad is telling us here is that Abraham and Ishmael built that in the middle of Mecca. Do we have any proof at all that Abraham and Ishmael were ever in Mecca?
No.
Nothing. We know where they were at. They were in the promised land. Okay. Secondly, this Kaaba, and it's funny because he says that they go around it, right? They go around it. This was a pagan temple, a pagan thing, and it has a black stone. And most people say that it is a meteorite. Do you know what I think it comes up soon, or maybe it comes up later on. The atom thing? No, maybe it comes up later on. Anyway, I'll just tell you now. What they believe is that Allah sent down this black stone in the time of Adam. And Adam held the stone and he left it there so that they would know that they are to build a shrine there or a temple there. So then 2,000 years after Adam, Abraham and Ishmael, not Isaac, Ishmael, they go and they build this Kaaba and they put the black stone there. Supposedly. Once again, supposedly. There's no proof of any of this. That obviously didn't happen, but whatever. Now this Kaaba, before Muhammad, what was it? It was a house that held 360 different idols. Gods. false gods. All the Arabs, what they would do once a year, they would come down on a specified day, and they would go around the Kaaba. They would go in circles around the Kaaba 7 times, and they would kiss the stone. That was their custom back in the paganism of Arabia. So what does Muhammad do? Muhammad says, okay, look, we have the structure. It came from Abraham and Ishmael. Sure. What we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all the gods. And I'm going to explain to you the history behind that later on. We're going to get rid of all the gods. And we're going to say that this is Allah. And you want to know why he picked Allah?
What? Oh.
What?
Well, you're going to get into the God thing.
Yeah, I'm going to get into the God thing later. But I'll just say right now, since I've been building it up. The reason why he chose Allah is because every family had a God that they were, like, for instance, the way Catholics, like,
The patron saint.
Yeah, the patron saint, whatever. Every family had a God. It just so happens that Muhammad's God was Allah. Which was what God?
Moon God.
The moon God. That is why all the Muslim flags have the crescent moon. It is because it was Muhammad's family's patron god of the 360 gods. So then he decided, you know what? There's only one true God. I am going to create a religion that blends Christianity and Judaism, but it kind of goes in a different way. And I'm going to say that the one true God was Allah. The other 359 were false, but it just happened to be his family's patron God. So then he turns this Kaaba now from a pagan worshiping thing to now it is the number one most holy place for the Muslims in the whole world. And every year, just like when they were pagans, every year they have a Hajj. A Hajj is a 5-day thing where Muslims go there and they circle, get this, they circle the Kaaba 7 times and they kiss the black stone. The same thing that the pagans were doing before. All Muhammad did was get rid of the 359 other gods, and he just chose the one that was his family's God. But yet that's a true religion, right? From God. Okay. All right. Okay. I don't know who you're selling that to. Abraham asked God for a sign, and God instructed him to cut 4 birds into pieces and scatter them on the mountains, and then call to them, and they will quickly fly back to you.
It's very random.
Okay. The angels, get this, the angels told Lot that his wife would not go out of Sodom because she was one of those who will stay behind. We know that that's false. We know that she ran out.
Yeah.
She just looked back and turned into a pillar of salt. You're going to like this one. God rained blocks of baked clay upon Sodom and Gomorrah. Each block targeted, get this, each block targeted by God upon a specific individual to be destroyed. So in other words, it wasn't fire and brimstone. It was baked clay, and Allah is the world's greatest sniper because he literally was from heaven sniping people with baked clay. All right. Oh, you're going to love this one. Moses was taken from the river by his mother rather than his sister. That's obviously clearly wrong. We know that his mother put him in there, then his sister got him with the daughter of Pharaoh. Oh, this one's pretty cool. You know how when they were in the wilderness, Moses struck the rock and then water came out because everybody was complaining, we got no water, we got no water. Yeah. Okay, get this one. You're going to love this one. Moses struck the rock, 12 fountains gushed out so that each tribe knew its drinking place. So he strikes the rock and exactly 12, it's like 12 water fountain streams come out. Yeah. And then you're like, all right, this one's Judah. This one's Gad. Simeon over there, Dan over there. Yeah. Or get in line, you know? Okay. God told Moses to kill a cow. Oh, this one's hilarious. God told Moses to kill a cow and hit a dead boy with it so he could revive. So the boy could kill it. Moses, go kill a cow, beat up this dead boy, because with this cow leg, he's going to come back to life. Identify his killer. In other words, ask him, who killed you, boy? and then he'll die again. The golden calf. Oh, this one's hilarious. The golden calf was fashioned by a Samaritan.
Doesn't even make any sense.
The guy's name was Samari, so then they assumed that he's from Samaria.
Oh.
Now, but get this, Samaria didn't exist back then.
No.
That just tells you, well, you're telling me this is coming from God? So the guy's name was Samari, so then they presuppose he was a Samaritan. Because once again, remember, Allah's writing this book after the New Testament, where we know Samaritans, Samaria. When Saul was chosen as king, God had the Ark of the Covenant brought to Israel by angels as a sign. By angels as a sign? So this one's good. Solomon, since he was so wise, right? He could control the wind and was assisted by devils. We made the wind subject to Solomon. We subdued the devils, forcing them to die for pearls for Solomon and do other work besides. And we kept close guard over them. Dude, it's just dumb.
It's just weird.
There was a battle between Solomon's army of jinn. Those are spirits, beings that are lower than angels. They sometimes attribute that to demons, devils, demons. There was a battle between Solomon's army of jinn and the army of men, birds, and ants. Did you capture that?
Birds and ants.
I'm telling you, this guy's making up stuff. It's so Solomon had an army of jinn, which were lower angels, and then most commentators attribute that to demons, which they were just saying that Solomon could subdue demons. So there was a battle between Solomon's army of demons and an army of men, birds, and ants. Those ants are tough, man.
Yeah.
In battle, those red ants, they'll get at you. The Queen of Sheba's envoy was told by Solomon, "What? Will you try to bribe me with riches?" In other words, that's just pointing out that's not in the Bible.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
that's just why, Okay, what about Mary? Mary, the mother of Jesus. Mary, get this one. Mary, the mother of Jesus, was the sister of Moses and Aaron, and she gave birth to Jesus under a palm tree, not in a manger.
How does that work, though?
I don't know. You tell me. This is the word of God. It's the uncorrupted word of God. Jesus made a bird of clay and brought it to life. He literally made a bird of clay and breathed life into it.
Yeah.
And the last one. The crucifixion of Jesus didn't happen. Jesus didn't die, but ascended to heaven. They said, "We killed the Messiah, Jesus, the son of Mary, Allah's messenger." But they did not kill him or crucify him, although it appeared so to them. And those who argued about it were in doubt concerning him. They had no clear knowledge about him and only went with opinion. They did not really kill him, but Allah lifted him up to himself. Allah is mighty and wise. That was the entire verse of Surah 4, 156. Basically, what their belief is concerning Christ is that there was a what does it call it? A lookalike. Mm-hmm. They found a lookalike, and he appeared to be Jesus, but he really wasn't. He was just a guy that looked exactly like Jesus. But the real Jesus, he was not killed. Allah ascended him up to heaven, to paradise.
Yeah.
So that's what they think about that.
Which doesn't make much sense at all.
No, none of it makes sense, Junior.
And that would mean that Allah allowed pretty much every believer back then to just be deceived, and he didn't care at all.
Look, the more you get into it, the more you realize that Allah is such a fake God. Allah does not love. Allah is he is impersonal. He is nothing like our Christ. He is nothing like our Yahweh. He is nothing like our Holy Spirit. So
now let's go into some of the things that the Quran says specifically about what Muhammad is able to do, and things that are weirdly written about him. An example is that he's able to take any slave girl or wife for himself.
mm-hmm.
which seems pretty immoral. Can you explain this and maybe some of the other things that they say?
Yeah, basically the Quran contains many statements from Allah justifying the behaviors of Muhammad, as well as those of his friends. Now, let's pause here. If you are behaving immorally, if you are doing things that are not right, that you know are not from God, but you're doing it. However, you're receiving revelation from God. Isn't it convenient that all of Muhammad's misdoings were allowed? Look. Wink, wink. Wink, wink. They were allowed by Allah. Muhammad can say whatever the heck he wants. Nobody knows the wiser. Yes, Muhammad can take a 9-year-old girl and have sex with her. Because guess what? He just says, yeah, Allah said it was okay. Allah said it is permissive for me to have relations with a prepubescent girl. It is okay. And guess what? That is not pedophilia because Allah said it was okay. All right. So in many parts of the Quran, the behaviors conveniently are the sin is kind of whitewashed. Yeah. And this is what one of the debaters likes to say when he talks about to Muslims is the difference between Yahweh, our God, and Allah is Allah will whitewash sin. Meanwhile, our God deals with sin. Mm-hmm. Our God deals with it. Guess what? David sinned, he dealt with it. You know what? Adam sinned, he dealt with it. Whenever anyone sins in the Bible, they are dealt with. Paul was dealt with. People, he doesn't whitewash anything. But of course, the Muslim understanding of sin is that they could just ask for forgiveness. And Allah will either forgive them or not. They don't know.
Yeah.
But as long as they keep doing their 5 prayers a day, then they think that they're saved. Mm. But that's the main difference. Allah whitewashes, covers the sin in a way that makes it look like it's okay, whereas our God deals with sin. Oh, we lost the light. The light died. Oh. One section of the Quran gives Muhammad the privilege of having slave girls and wives of whomever he pleased as a special dispensation of Allah. How convenient. He could say, you're my wife, you're my slave. You're my wife. You're my slave. Allah said it's okay. You're my wife. You're my slave. Why does this guy want so many wives anyway? Like, then they have to build more houses and it's just more stuff to deal with. Were women just like, back then, like, were they just boring? Like he needed more to have more stimulating conversation? I don't know. When Muhammad married his daughter-in-law, Zainab, Allah approved. His daughter-in-law, by the way. After Muhammad expressed interest in her, his adopted son Zaid divorced her so Muhammad could marry her. Allah's comment on this was as follows. So this is what Allah says regarding that. And when Zaid divorced his wife, we gave her to you as your wife. So it would not be a sin for believers to marry the wives of their adopted sons after they have divorced them. And Allah's will must be carried out. The messenger will not be blamed for anything that Allah has given permission to do. Doesn't that verse sound like Muhammad made it up?
Yeah.
It literally sounds like he just said, okay, look, let me say it this way and they'll think it's from Allah. Okay. When there's another one. What happens when you get too many women in the house?
Drama happens.
Drama always follows women. So guess what happens? There was strife among the women. Muhammad had a slave girl. She was a Coptic slave girl named Mary. She bore him a son. Allah told him to ignore them and to do what he pleased. Why, O messenger, do you forbid yourself that which Allah has made lawful to you? Do you seek to please your wives? But now get this. Allah, see, this is basically, it's not, now is when you know that Muhammad's making this up.
Yeah.
So now two of his wives, they're apparently they're being critical of Muhammad. Maybe he's not spending enough time with them. Maybe he's spending too much time with the slave girls and not enough time with them. I don't know, whatever. But apparently they were complaining about him. Allah even warned Hafsa and Aisha, the young one, Muhammad's wives, that if they did not repent of their criticism of Muhammad, they would become the enemies of God and angels, and Allah might give his messenger new wives to replace him. So you mean to tell me that Allah, the wise, merciful, powerful God, is actually wasting his time dealing with affairs that are domestic? Like, are you telling me the truth?
Yeah.
That is obviously made up by Muhammad. He's basically saying, look, girls, if you guys don't stop complaining about me, I'm going to get rid of you and get new wives. But he's like, okay, but wait. We have to say it came from Allah. So wait. Allah said, girls, stop fighting. Stop complaining. And if you don't, then he can get rid of you. Okay, good. This is the surah. This is the surah that actually talks about it. If you both turn in repentance to Allah, your hearts are already inclined to this. But if you conspire against the messenger, in other words, if you two get together and try to do something against him, then know that Allah is his protector, and Gabriel and every just man among the faithful, and the angels are his helpers besides. Perhaps if he divorces you all, Allah would give him better wives than you. You mean that was obviously written by Muhammad?
Yeah.
He obviously just made that up. I mean, you think God is gonna, first of all, actually stoop so low to like deal with two wives that are being a nuisance to Muhammad? Come on. Check this out. There's even a special revelation from Allah instructing people, you're going to love this one, not to spend too much time in Muhammad's house.
He was getting annoyed by everyone hanging out with him.
Everybody comes to my house and they don't leave. They come to my house and they don't leave. Guess what? Allah, please help me out here. Help me out here, Allah. Can you please give me a verse that I could say so that these people leave my house? Look at what he writes. This is in Surah 33:53. And I think we're going to end this transmission here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's going to take.
Okay. He says, believers, do not enter the messenger's house early for a meal unless you are given permission. When you are invited, enter, and when you have finished your meal, leave. This sounds like a law that I need to put on my door. Because this is me generally. Look, the minute you guys are done eating, just go, leave. Do not remain there hoping to start a conversation. This is God speaking, right, Junior? Do not remain there hoping to start a conversation, for this would annoy the messenger, and he would be ashamed to send you home. But Allah is not ashamed to tell you the truth. And if you should speak to his wives, do so behind a curtain. You mean to tell me that this is word of God? This is God's word? Allah's saying, look, man, the guy's busy. Don't hang around, man. Just when you eat, leave. You know. Look, we wanted to get through more, but this is fun. This is interesting. It's fun. Just so you know, we're reading from a specific book, and I want to share that with you. It is a Lifeway publication book. If you go to Lifeway, let me see exactly where the website is. If you go to Way of Life, if you go to www.wayoflife.org, they have tons of resources, free books, tons of resources, different religions, different things, different topics, and they give it to you for free. But yeah, this is basically the book. It's the Bible and Islam, and we're just basically reading from it because the people that wrote this book really wrote it in a way that it's easy to read. It's easy to digest. It isn't heavy theologically, and it kind of flows. So we're kind of giving you what they believe, how they believe through this particular book. And once again, wayoflife.org. You could download this yourself. They're all PDFs, and they're all free. So, that's what we have for today. So we will be continuing on with Islam. We got a lot to say. Yeah. I thought this was going to be a 3-parter. It might be a 4-parter. We'll see. We'll see how much we can get through.
Well, the good thing is you kind of already answered the next question earlier.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the one about the Allah being the moon god.
Oh, okay. Oh,
featuring
that.
God.
Oh, you see, yeah.
Yeah.
See, I got off on a tangent, and then
Yeah.
so then I kind of gave that. Yeah.
So we'll be starting off next week talking about Allah himself, the God himself, supposed God.
Yeah, because I talked about the Kaaba. I
Yeah.
showed it and all that, and then the idols. Okay, yeah. So I basically answered that one earlier. All right. Yeah. So next time we'll go to Allah's character.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect.
All right. So thank you guys for watching. And
Do you have any closing thoughts?
no, they're just crazy people. Muhammad's a crazy person.
No. And once we get into the killing, that's when it gets nutty. All right. So it's just, it is a self-contradicting religion, and it is sad that so many people are getting sucked into this cult.
So many people.
Yeah, millions, billions. Anyway,
Well, thank you guys for joining us. We'll see you next week, continuing on Islam. So
God bless you all. We'll keep talking about the Muslims. Take care.
see you.
God bless.